Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Music, Meaning, and Memory. Thank you so much for coming tonight and supporting the Alzheimer's Society. All the proceeds from this evening's event will go towards improving the lives of people with dementia and their families, so your generosity is much appreciated. My name is Nahi. I'm an old-age psychiatry consultant and a dementia researcher at UCL. My previous work in dementia has shown that a lot of people are hesitant to talk about memory problems and dementia symptoms, particularly in the South Asian community. This can be because people think that it's part of normal aging, or because there's a sense of shame or stigma surrounding memory problems. So part of the motivation for this evening's event was to try and open up the conversations around memory problems and try and reduce the stigma surrounding them. Music and memory are inextricably intertwined. Even in people with advanced dementia, a piece of music can spark a memory or generate connection and joy. And sometimes people can find it easier to sing even when they're no longer able to express themselves through speech. We all have pieces of music that are dear to us, that can evoke strong emotions, or that can transport us to a distant time and place that is precious to us. So in this way, music, meaning, and memory are threads that are woven throughout the fabric of our lives. I knew, therefore, that music had to be central to any event that I put on about memory. And I was really fortunate to be able to work with Soumik Datta and Akademi in order to bring this event to life. Soumik is not only an award-winning virtuoso sarod artist, he's also a composer, producer, TV presenter, and creative director of Soumik Datta Arts, which is a creative hub. Akademi is a dynamic and forward-facing organization which seeks to bring professional South Asian dance to the heart of British culture. Through residencies, artistic outputs, and performances, they've brought South Asian dance to thousands of people through hundreds of performances. So I'm very honored to be able to share this event to have been able to work with them and bring this event to you all tonight. In order to prepare for this event, we ran music and movement workshops in a care home and a day center. And it was really moving to watch how people connected through music, sometimes coming to life, sometimes being calmed down when they were agitated. And those experiences have inspired us to create new pieces of music and dance, which you will see here tonight for the first time. You will have seen when you came in some quotations on the screen behind me, which are some of the experiences that people have shared with me about looking after someone with dementia or memory problems. And I'm very grateful to particularly Shibli Rahman, Debolina Gupta, and Nilaki Roy for sharing their experiences and also for allowing me to share them here tonight. So this evening, I'll start by presenting 3 pieces of music, 3 songs. I'll then hand over to Soumik, who will present his music that he's composed for this evening's event, and which is a work in progress that he will continue to work on. We'll then have a 20-minute interval, following which we will see the extremely talented Jesal Patel and Seema Patel from Akademi, who will be performing a new dance piece. So I'm very much looking forward to hearing and seeing them tonight. So the first piece of music that I'm going to sing is called Kaagaz Ki Kashti. This is an old classic which many of you may know. It's basically a person describing their childhood. So they're talking about the Kaagaz Ki Kashti, which is a paper boat, and how they would play with that in the rain. When I first heard the song, I thought about it as, just someone being nostalgic about the past and maybe wanting to return to a simpler time in their life. But as I've worked with people who have memory problems, it occurred to me that it can actually be interpreted as someone wanting their memories returned to them as well. Because when we start to lose our memories, we can feel like we're losing part of ourselves. So this is Kaagaz Ki Kashti.
ये दौलत भी ले लो, ये शोहरत भी ले लो, भले छीन लो मुझसे मेरी जवानी, मगर मुझको लौटा दो बचपन का सावन, वो कागज की कश्ती, वो बारिश का पानी, वो कागज की कश्ती, वो बारिश का पानी। मोहल्ले की सबसे निशानी पुरानी, वो बुढ़िया जिसे बच्चे कहते थे नानी, वो नानी की बातों में परियों का डेरा, वो चेहरे की झुर्रियों में सदियों का फेरा, भुलाए नहीं भूल सकता है कोई, भुलाए नहीं भूल सकता है कोई, वो छोटी सी रातें, वो लंबी कहानी, वो छोटी सी रातें, वो लंबी कहानी। कड़ी धूप में अपने घर से निकलना, वो चिड़िया वो बुलबुल वो तितली पकड़ना, वो गुड़ियों की शादी में लड़ना झगड़ना, वो झूलों से गिरना, वो गिर के संभलना, वो पीतल के छल्लों के प्यारे सितारे, वो पीतल के छल्लों के प्यारे सितारे, वो टूटी हुई चूड़ियों की निशानी, वो कागज की कश्ती, वो बारिश का पानी, वो कागज की कश्ती, वो बारिश का पानी, वो कागज की कश्ती, वो बारिश का पानी। कभी रेत के ऊंचे टीलों पे जाना, घरौंदे बनाना, बना के मिटाना, वो मासूम चाहत की तस्वीर अपनी, वो ख्वाबों खिलौनों की जागीर अपनी, न दुनिया का हम था न रिश्तों के बंधन, न दुनिया का हम था न रिश्तों के बंधन, बड़ी खूबसूरत थी वो जिंदगानी, बड़ी खूबसूरत थी वो जिंदगानी, बड़ी खूबसूरत थी वो जिंदगानी, बड़ी खूबसूरत थी वो जिंदगानी।
Thank you very much. The next song is in Urdu. It's called Ek Jhalak, which means a glimpse of you. And this song was inspired by family carers who told me about what it's like to look after someone with memory problems. So they can vary from moment to moment or day to day. Sometimes it feels as though they can remember everything, or they remember a lot, and it feels like you're with the person that you you know and you love, so you get a glimpse of the true, the real them. But then the next moment things can change and it can feel as though you've lost them again. So this is Ek Jhalak.
एक झलक दिखला के खो गए हो तुम, याद के वीरान में हो गए हो गुम। एक झलक दिखला के खो गए हो तुम, याद के वीरान में हो गए हो गुम। हमने खाई थी कसम, हाथ छोड़ेंगे न हम, धूप हो या छाँव, साथ हैं हम हर कदम। तेरा साया मैं बनूं, मेरा साया तुम, मेरी रूह और जिस्म को पिघलाते तुम। एक झलक दिखला के खो गए हो तुम, याद के वीरान में हो गए हो गुम। तेरी जस्तजू में अब गुम हो रात और दिन, लम्हा लम्हा हो गई है मुद्दत तेरे बिन। बहते हुए लम्हे छीनते तुमको, मैं किनारा हूँ तेरा, हाथ थाम लो तुम। एक झलक दिखला के खो गए हो तुम, याद के वीरान में हो गए हो गुम। एक झलक दिखला के खो गए हो तुम, याद के वीरान में हो गए हो गुम। याद के वीरान में हो गए हो गुम।
The last song I'm going to sing is called Hathe Rekhe Hath. It's a Bengali song, which means literally hand in hand. And this was again inspired by conversations with family carers for someone with dementia, where they talked about how they would try and maintain connection with their loved one despite the problems they were having with their memory. So this was sometimes connecting through physical touch, so actually holding their hand, but at other times just trying to connect through shared activities. And they got the sense that sometimes that would work and they would feel like they were making a connection and staying together. And at other times it felt as though the person was being swept away from them, and they would do their best to try and get them back. So this is Hathe Rekhe Hath.
হাতে রেখে হাত তবু কত দূরে, কাছে টেনে নি তুমি রইলে অচিনপুরে, পাশে পাশে রয়ে সেই কোনো এক সুদূর দেশে তুমি আমি ছিলাম কোথায় গেল সময় স্মৃতি হারালাম কি জীবন চিরতরে আমি তোমার ভুলি নাই মন চিরতরে আমি তোমার ভুলি নাই মন হাতে রেখে হাত তবু কত দূরে কাছে টেনে নি তুমি রইলে অচিনপুরে পাশে পাশে রয়ে তবু চেনা নাই যে চেনা চেনা লাগে হৃদয় ভেঙে যায় রে হাতে রেখে হাত তবু কত দূরে বসে আছি তোমার সাথে যাচ্ছ কোথায় ছেড়ে ভেসে গেলে আমায় রেখে শরণ সাগর পারে ধূসর আকাশ নীরব জগৎ বড়ই একা লাগে ধূসর আকাশ নীরব জগৎ বড়ই একা লাগে হাতে রেখে হাত তবু কত দূরে কাছে টেনে নি তুমি রইলে অচিনপুরে পাশে পাশে রয় তবু চেনা নাই যে চেনা চেনা লাগে হৃদয় ভেঙে যায় রে হাতে রেখে হাত তবু কত দূরে হাতে রেখে হাত তবু কত দূরে হাতে রেখে হাত তবু কত দূরে
Thank you so much for listening and for being here tonight. I really appreciate it. Dementia can be a devastating illness, but I'm constantly inspired and humbled by all the families and the people with dementia that I speak to who keep going, who keep trying to find connection and meaning. And although we don't have a cure for dementia yet, there's always new research going on. Many of my colleagues do very interesting and groundbreaking work, including Professor Livingston, who's here tonight, whose work has shown that up to 40% of dementia cases may be preventable, and who has developed a number of interventions to help improve the mental health of family carers. So that all makes me very hopeful for the future of dementia. So thank you again for your support, and I'm going to hand over to Soumik Datta now, whose work I'm very much looking forward to watching. So thank you.
Hello everyone. Thanks for joining us this evening. It's been great to work with Nahid on this project, visiting elderly people in care homes, understanding a bit about our brains, our memories, how we store them and how we lose them. This year would have been the 90th year of my guru, my teacher, the man who taught me sarod, Pandit Buddhadev Das Gupta, who I lovingly called Dadu, which in Bengali means grandfather. Dadu left his body 5 years ago, but his memories remain, embedded in the music he taught his students, in the rags he taught me. My earliest memory of him is in his house in Kolkata, where he taught me the two basic alphabets of sarod, da and ra, And if I think back hard enough, I can almost hear his voice reaching back through time, calling to me across decades from the afterlife, still teaching me the principles of music.
Let us start with the board of sarod. Sarod vocabulary is based on only two types of sound that this plectrum can give you. One is da and the other is ra. But with these two alphabets, we have been able to conjure up, hundreds of different kinds of bowls or words. Diri, diri. Da da diri diri da diri diri da da da. There's only different placements of da and ra in various forms. Da diri diri da diri diri da 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 diri diri da diri diri da 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 diri diri da diri diri da 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 diri diri da diri diri da 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 diri diri da diri diri da da da. out a gut in Baha. It is composed of small phrases, each one repeated exactly twice.
Small phrases, each one repeated exactly twice.
There has been nothing added except the exact repetition of two phrases.
Exact repetition of two phrases.
I will try to analyze. Small phrases, each one repeated exactly twice.
Repeated exactly twice.
I will try to analyze.
I'll try to analyze. Small phrases, each one repeated
exactly twice.
Exactly twice.
রাগকে বিভিন্ন দৃষ্টিকোণ থেকে দেখলে, বিভিন্ন লোকের মন্দির শুনলে, তবে তোমার রাগের পরিধি এইটা যদি না হয়, তুমি ভালো করে পারফর্ম করতে পারবে না। তোমার পারফরমেন্স উইল বি বাউন্ড ডাউন বাই সাম ওয়েল থট আউট মুভমেন্টস অ্যান্ড অ্যাডেড উইথ গিমিক্রি। এখন যেটা দরকার লোককে খুশি করবার জন্য, লোকের সাধারণ শ্রোতাকে, এখনকার শ্রোতাদের আগেকার দিনের গান বাজনা করলে তারা বুঝতেই পারবে না, নিতেই পারবে না।
There are two cuts. One is in Tintal and the other is in Chaptal, I think, but I forget which is which. Can you teach it to me again?
There are two cuts absolutely akin to each other. They are sounding exactly similar. The one which gives you the impression of being set to Tintal is set to Chantal, and the one which sounds set to very odd matras is actually Tintal cut. রাগ রাগিনী যদি তুমি পারমিউটেশন এন্ড কম্বিনেশন করো এই 11টা নোটের কয়েক লক্ষ রাগ রাগিনী তবে হবে, তারও বেশি। কিন্তু রাগ রাগিনী খালি নোটেশন নয়, রাগ রাগিনীর মধ্যে যতক্ষণ না হিউম্যান মেসেজ একটা কিছু থাকবে, যতক্ষণ না হিউম্যান মেসেজ একটা কিছু থাকবে, হিউম্যান মেসেজ একটা কিছু থাকবে, হিউম্যান হিউম্যান মেসেজ হিউম্যান মেসেজ হিউম্যান 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 মেসেজ হিউম্যান মেসেজ হিউম্যান মেসেজ হিউম্যান মেসেজ।
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the second half. My name is Subha Subramaniam, and I'm the Artistic Director of Akademi. It's been a real privilege to have been part of this project. What you're about to watch is a piece of dance choreographed by Jesal Patel. Jesal has over 17 years' experience of working in care homes and with older people. She's been working with Akademi for many, many years, and we feel really happy to have her as part of our dance artists and group of dance artists that we support. What you're about to see is a work in progress, inspired by the people, by the stories, and by the collective movement that Jesal saw and created with the residents of the care homes that she's been working with for this project. She spent over 4 weeks with the people that she's been working with, and what you're about to see is a culmination of all that time and all the stories and all the people. Thank you.
Da 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 da
I just want to start by saying thank you to Soumik, Nahid, Seema and Jesal for a really beautiful evening of work. And I thought I'd start, should we give them a round of applause? And I just want to say that your words at the beginning, the poetry, was never far away from, I know definitely my mind when I was listening to the music and watching the movement. So it was really poignant and really beautiful to have that right at the beginning. And it felt like it set so much about what the evening was about for all of us as an audience. And if you don't mind indulging me, audience, I just want to start off the Q&A by just asking them a few questions, and then hopefully we'll open it out to all of you, and hopefully you'll have lots of questions. I just thought I'd ask you first, Nahid, if you could just tell us a little bit about the research that you're currently doing and how all of this sits within that research.
Yeah, thank you. Does this work? Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for those kind words. Yeah, so I think I started my research really looking at interethnic differences in how people accessed help for dementia, and found that there was a lot of stigma and reluctance to come forward in the South Asian community. And I think it's built from there really. So so I've sort of continued looking at interethnic differences, but now looking more at risk factors as well as post-diagnostic support. So this is very much sort of aligned with that. But I've never done anything like this before, in terms of bringing the creative arts and academia together. So yeah, so although very much aligned with what I do, it feels very different, and it's been great to be a part of it and work with very, very talented artists, and be able to watch their performances tonight for the first time has been really wonderful.
And when you've been listening and watching, do you see some of that work, some of that research kind of in the work that you're seeing?
Oh, definitely. It's been very moving, actually, with listening to Soumik and watching Jesal and Seema perform. I feel it's really chimed with, the conversations that we've had with each other, when we were doing these workshops, as well as, what people have been saying to us when we visited them, the stories that they tell us, the experiences. So it's been very moving.
Thank you. Soumik, how do you start? How do you even start with a process like this? Just talk us through a little bit of your process to create this beautiful work that we will listen to.
Thank you. I can't remember. I think it was serendipity, maybe, because towards the end of last year, I was sort of coming to a point. I was thinking about how it's so easy for South Asian musicians, dancers who come from a very classical background and training, how easy it is for them to transition into fusion because it's just more palatable to a broader audience, and also the intricacy of the language of Indian classical arts, especially, is not understood by everyone, and that's just a fact. And so if the language isn't understood by everyone, then there's a lot of the language that gets lost and not appreciated. So then why not do something that everyone can appreciate, right? So hence a lot of people, a lot of my colleagues, me too, we've ventured into fusion a lot, fusion music, different kinds of collaborations. So it got me thinking about, well, why is it important to play rag and tal? Why is it important to hold on to your tradition, to what you've been taught, this oral tradition, that's not really written down anywhere. It existed in my guru's memory, in his, from what his guru taught him and his guru beyond that. And so why is it important to hold on to this at all? And so I was sort of at this place where I was thinking, well, is it possible to stay within the world of Indian classical music and still do something new? And I think that's when you emailed me. And and that was November, December, I think, and we started talking, and I realized we're sort of talking about the same thing. We're talking about the need to remember, and why should we remember? That's where it started.
Thank you. That's really beautiful, and as you say, really serendipitous as well. Jesal, now so much of what we saw came from the actual movement work that you did with the residents in the care homes. Do you want to share with us a little bit about how you have used movement with the residents, who I imagine have different abilities and come with different life experiences?
As we are Kathak trained, we use a lot of hand gestures. So, and we tell stories through hand gestures and body movements. So I kind of use that as a tool to communicate at the care homes. The simplest things like just hand gestures saying, come here and go away, or very nice, or, thumbs up for, and a wave, simple hand gestures like that we started off doing, and then from there we kind of figured out how much we can extend these movements, and from that it provoked different memories of their childhood, or just memories of them in different surroundings and with different people. Lots of cultural aspects to that as well that were brought up. So I mean, it all kind of started from just small hand gestures.
Great. Seema, I know that Jesal did the work in the workshops, but you both performed, and I know you collaborated with Jesal. So how was that like? How did Jesal share that with you? And then how did you create the piece that we saw?
Well, actually, Jesal's got a really interesting mind. She's very creative, and the way she shows her creativity is through her drawings. So the first meeting I had with her, when I was like, okay, tell me your thoughts, what are your ideas around this? She had a piece of paper with a drawing on it, and there was a circle which represented a tree, was that right? And there was a branch coming out from each of them, and each of them had a kind of, I guess, some sort of kind of aspect of what she's learned. So like with people that have dementia or memory loss, so things about moving backwards in time, or, I think there was other things as well that you were talking about. It was just about that loss of kind of memory, repetitiveness. And it was just interesting, that drawing. It was very visual. So from there, I think we just started using the movements that she's kind of picked up from the workshops with the care home, in the care homes. We kind of created movements through that, and we experimented. So one of the aspects you see about with the scarves that we use, which are colourful scarves, she actually came to me. She goes one day that she took a paper plate into a class, and there is, how do you use a paper plate? What do you do with it? And she was like saying that they were using as steering wheels, and so we just kind of played with these scarves because the colours represent emotions, doesn't they? Memories, and I think we were talking about the fact that you feel all the rainbows, the colours of the rainbows as part of your emotions. So we use the scarves as a kind of prop, which is why you see them in different pieces. So yeah, it just kind of grew organically from that, I think. And I think that's how it went. So I was saying she's got a very interesting mind, very creative girl.
Thank you. Now, it'd be really lovely if there are any questions from the audience. Could we have the light up, please, in the audience, so we can see if there are any questions, because I can't see from here. And if there is a microphone we could hand over, or if you're happy to shout. Any questions from the audience? Yes, go ahead.
Question. I think there's some. So, in terms of what works to prevent memory loss, we know that keeping physically and mentally active is generally good. There are no trials specifically showing that that a sort of a music and movement workshop will necessarily make memory loss any better, but it's definitely a good way of connecting and bringing joy and improving people's quality of life. So definitely brings a lot of meaning to people's lives.
Any other questions? Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, so I think a lot of people have stigma because, you know, when you have memory loss, you behave in ways that are maybe not so socially acceptable. So sometimes people don't come forward because they think that memory loss is just a part of normal aging. So they think it's not something to seek help for. And then at other times, someone behaves, you know, in a strange way, or they're repetitive. They're not what they're usually like, and that can cause embarrassment. If you don't know that it's caused by, you know, an illness, a disease that is affecting your brain, then that can make people embarrassed. There's, you know, some people have spoken about feeling as though it's, you know, some sort of that either they're just losing their mind, you know, it's a mental illness, and that's very stigmatized, or that they feel that it's some sort of punishment for earlier sins. So there's a lot of, you know, misunderstanding about what the symptoms mean, and I think that's why events like this are important in order to, you know, open up the conversation and show that, you know, it's an illness. We need to have compassion and understanding and talk about it more.
I mean, I can speak to that a little bit because, yeah, I've been thinking a lot about how, you know, I grew up with a lot of what I thought were like old people around, both my grandparents' sets, and then I met and then various other aunties and uncles and this and that, and like, you know, lots of old people and medicine bottles and stuff. And then I met my guru, who was already well into his 60s, which for a 13-year-old is like, you know, it's quite a gap. And I think you see this a lot in Indian classical sort of the ecology of it, that quite often there is a guru who is several generations removed, and you suddenly have this incredible relationship with that person in a way that we don't really have in normal kind of society. You know, there's this sense of intergenerational friendship. It's more than a friendship, like a real bond. It can happen with your grandparents, but very rarely beyond that. So I think there is something about the way in which Indian classical arts are taught, the ecology around it, the role of the guru, this sense of an umbrella figure, the sense of a living archive, which is a phrase that my friend Zoe recently told me to use, and not museum, Jesal to like, so living archive. I think that's really special about Indian classical music and Indian classical dance.
Jesal, you've been taking Indian classical dance to working with older people in care homes for so many years. It'd be lovely to hear about your experience of taking Indian dance and music.
I guess most of us can relate, like having trained for quite a number of years. I don't know, I think what comes to my mind is how we were taught. Like, we never had recorders, we never had like phones where you can record things or video record. You do it now when you're teaching classes and stuff, but I guess that training, as Soumik was saying, is just like the way the training happens is that you have that kind of relationship with your Guruji where you have that respect, where what you're taught is priceless and you really cherish and memorize those things. And I think it's just, so like even kind of some of it becomes innate, I guess, in terms of some tukras that you do, etc. You just can't get that out of your mind. And I think it's just that, I guess, that relationship you have specifically with your Gurujis, because they have so much knowledge. They're an archive, as Soumik was saying. And I think that way of training, you know, in a way I think now is kind of slightly being lost, because you've got those technology that's really useful, or, you know, it's easy to kind of record things on voice notes, etc. But that whole use of memory, it really kind of it trains your brain. And I think that's probably the specialism, I guess, within classical dance or Indian dance anyway, that we've learned. There's some things that, you know, you could just say a tukra and you just remember how it was taught to us in a certain way, a style. And, you know, it's precious. It's a very precious thing to learn.
It's also, if you don't mind me, because I've watched you in action, Jesal, a lot, and the beauty of the forms and the gestures, it's almost made to share. And when you break down some of those movements and you take it out of a classical context and put it into a real life context, it becomes totally and utterly relatable. And then when you relate that to stories and memories and how real life and everyday some of that gestures become, it's the way in for us as, you know, dance artists to be able to go anywhere and take our forms to anybody, whatever the age, whatever the ability, whether there are memories or not. And the physicalizing of some of these gestures also brings back little kernels of memories that are sort of hidden away. And that's the thing that I've noticed a lot when, you know, Jesal, when you go into some of these workshops, is the way in which suddenly a story about a holiday becomes so immediate and real. And those little bits of memories can then be physicalized with some of the gestures that we use. And this way to sort of share. And then the other beautiful thing that I always love watching when you work is how it suddenly becomes a collective experience. And there is something so beautiful about moving together and having rhythm and music and actually physicalizing. And it stops becoming dance. It becomes about a shared space to move and a shared stories and memories. And I think that's, and a lot of the residents don't even realize they're doing anything vaguely Indian. You know, the culture almost becomes secondary, even though we're bringing the culture to that space, it becomes secondary. And that's one of the most beautiful things about watching South Asian dance artists working in settings like care homes and with older people. I don't know if you heard that. Rachel just said, are the artists going to take the work back to the residents to share it?
I mean, that's a lovely idea. Yeah, we hadn't planned, because we'd sort of arranged, you know, a certain number of workshops, but they were all very keen to see us back. So yeah, so I'm sure we could be in touch and take it back. That's a lovely idea. Yeah, it's an interesting point. I think in Oliver Sacks's book about music, he hypothesizes that because there are some sort of imaging studies that suggest that it might be because music is encoded more as a network throughout the brain rather than being recorded in a particular part of the brain. So even when, you know, certain bits of the brain are losing their functionality, you've still got these networks that are still connected. So that seems to be the current explanation. But I think it's a wonderful thing, and it's, you know, in our workshops, just to see how people, who had really advanced dementia and how they reacted to music. Some familiar, but some even unfamiliar music. And they just really responded to it. I don't think that there's any research suggesting that it's one or the other. I think it's whatever's meaningful to the person, that themselves. So whatever they've been used to. I mean, I think I had some assumptions actually going into this that that South Asian people would really think about their South Asian or more classical music, but actually a lot of them wanted to hear Elvis, and and one of the another carer I spoke to, talked about, it was one of the quotations on the screen actually talked about him, his mother who'd grown up in rural Bangladesh, who her favorite song was My Way by Frank Sinatra. So, that really, I was just like, okay, I had some cultural, expectations and, assumptions that were wrong. So yeah, it's just whatever connects with you.
Yes, it is him. The majority of the recordings that we used were part of a lecture demonstration series that he did. So they were not recordings that I made of him personally. But there are one or two other bits, especially when he speaks in Bangla, which are from my personal archives. And yeah, this is his 90th year, as I said, and it was in some ways I was like, well, I always collaborate with people on stage and play with different people. I wonder if I can bring my guru back to the stage.
I'll have to ask you guys. When are you going to showcase us?
Well, we'll find any opportunity to try and continue that. And Jesal continues to work with older people. So yes, if there's any platform or anywhere where we can continue the process and show the work, then I know Akademi would absolutely love to support that.
Yeah, my piece is probably a third of a larger work, which is titled Mone Rekho, which in Bengali means remember. And it's something, well, when you transliterate it, it's almost like keep it in your mind, or like keep it in your heart or something, or like learn, as we say, like learn it by heart. And it's something that Dadu used to say a lot. When he taught me something, he'd be like, Mone Rekho. Like, and he was quite strict about, like, he didn't take kindly if you just forgot bits of compositions and stuff. So it was like, and he'd throw this avalanche of insults at you, like, and the Bangla for goat and pig and headless chicken and all kinds of things is interesting, material to get at 7 a.m. in the morning. So I definitely tried to remember as much as I could. And so this phrase is taken from, but yeah, it's a larger piece about, our relationship, but also about, I think, Indian classical music as a whole and where it sits, because I think it sits in a, just an interesting place where it's quite easy to erase it in the way we're moving with society and and where these things that are quite fragile and not tied down and not written and not formalized, it's quite easy to erase it. So in some ways, maybe it's also about that, and about maybe a culture of care for the elderly. So these are some ideas that we're trying to explore in this new piece called Mone Rekho, which will be out in November. So there's actually, we have these little sign-up things outside. So if you'd like to just leave us your name and stuff, we'll let you know when the show is happening.
Yeah, I mean, I think that a lot of the carers that I've spoken to already use music, movement, touch in order to connect with the person that they're looking after. I think, you were asking about future plans. I think I've really enjoyed working in this sort of creative space, so I'd be, keen to think about, interventions that can be used to sort of, in a more formalized way to help carers and people with dementia.
And we are definitely doing a lot of work with carers. So we work in a very similar way with dance. I know we're doing a session with, I think, Wandsworth carers soon. So it goes alongside the work that we do with residents in care homes. So dance is a big part of the work we do with carers as well.
Okay, I think we have to wrap it up for the evening. I just wanted to say thank you so much, everyone, for your support, for your interesting questions. And I'd really like to thank all the Bloomsbury Theatre staff. They've worked incredibly, incredibly hard today, but also I know for weeks and weeks doing lots of very important creative things. So thank you, everyone, and thank you to the staff for hosting us.